So pleasing the teen. Teens run our economy, and they're very unresponsive to traditional marketing methods, but they do respond to cool. So that's why we have cool hunters, people looking for these early adopters and leaders. But once mass consumers pick up cool and run with it, they kill it. Under the radar marketing. This is where media giants try to become cool themselves, so they don't sell products anymore, but lifestyles. So who are these true merchants of cools? Well, there's top 5 companies that are responsible for selling youth culture. First, we have Time Warner, News Corporation, Disney, Viacom, and Vivendi Universal. Then we have MTV. MTV is just a commercial, and the first rule of cool, don't let your marketing show. Then we have the midriff. The midriff are young girls that are consumed by appearances, prematurely adult, and they're consumed by sex. Their messages are to flaunt their sexuality, even if they don't understand it. Next we have the mook, like Johnny Knoxville. These mooks are for the boys. They're stuck in their adolescence, and they don't care what people think. So what is this giant feedback loop? Does the media reflect the world of teens, or are teens really imitating the media? Either way, the media gives images of the mook and the midriff to kids, and they in turn watch and act that way. And they also give new images back to the media to profit from. So what about even teen rebellion? Well, guess what? It's just become another product. The fight is packaged and sold right back to them. So no matter how much resistance there is, we still have those homogeneous, dominant forces working against us. Chapter 2: Consumer Cultures. Identity becomes a reflection of lifestyles that are closely associated with commercial brands and the products they label, and the attitudes and behaviors linked to where we shop, what we buy, what we eat, wear, and consume. The attributes are associated with income, class, and other economic forces that appear to permit choice, but are overdetermined by demographics and are beyond the control of consumers. In consumer cultures, people are taught and convinced due to advertising to consume more than they need, which later causes them to go into debt to maintain their desired lifestyle. Consumer culture is an economy defined by the buying and spending of all members of society. Then we have 3 ways consumer culture is based upon. Number 1, the expansion of capitalist commodity production, which has given rise to material culture. Number 2, there is a sociological view that the satisfaction derived from goods relates to individuals' socially structured access in which satisfaction and status depend upon displaying and sustaining differences within conditions of the rise in prices, focusing on various ways people use goods in order to create social bonds. And number 3, there is a question of the emotional pleasures of consumption, the dreams and desires which commemorate in consumer cultural imagery that generates excitement. Then we have Edward Bernays. His argument is Does public relations and advertising have the ability to shape a society's collective consciousness without anyone in that society recognizing what happened? Well, he suggests that there is more to the development of consumer cultures than advertising and other ways of shaping public opinions and desires. In order for consumer culture to develop, people have to change their mindsets and the way they think about consumption. Consumer culture as we know it today. What we see throughout society and in the media has a huge influence in determining the way we think and establishing our social status within our group of friends. Consumerism sways the overall economy as a whole and reproduces the values that profile it. I think society needs to redefine their needs and desires and make distinctions between them and come to terms with their priorities. Then we have John Calvin. He argues that we must avoid two extremes. Number 1, extravagant excesses and overindulgences. And number 2, life-denying austerity and asceticism. Next we have Jean Rivière. Individuals are the result of two factors. Number 1, the strength, love, and hate tendencies. And number 2, the influence of our environment and society. Some measure of greed exists unconsciously in everyone. It represents an aspect of desire to live. But material objects secure the emptiness inside ourselves and make us feel worthy of love, respect, and honor. Next, how could we talk about capitalism without a little bit of Marxist theory? Well, according to Marx, consumer culture locates the driving force behind our desire to acquire goods and the need to feel good about ourselves. It is not consciousness that determines society, it's society that determines consciousness. Also, Marx calls the economic system of society the base, which shapes the ideas people have in determining the kinds of social, political, and economic arrangements they will make with one another. And lastly, it is only when people purchase things that they find momentary gratification and escape from the alienation that's. So what does advertising do? Well, it sells products in order to allow all members of society to participate in consumer culture, much of which we've looked at throughout this entire presentation. It generates dissatisfactions and anxieties in people and feeds on the isolation that spreads throughout capitalist societies. It promotes narcissism. It leads people to focus on their own personal wants or desires and to neglect social and political matters and the needs of others. Then we have Jean Baudrillard. Advertising sells consumption and is an object of consumption. He also says people are affected by advertisements, and it is general push towards regression and its ability to tell people of their hidden desires and finding ways to satisfy them. He says contemporary society is a postmodern society, which is no longer structured by production, in which the individual conforms to its needs, but by symbolic exchange. Capitalism has been replaced by consumer society, which is characterized by a proliferation of signs, the media, and messages. These signs have become the primary aspect of social experience. The things we purchase are no longer evaluated in terms of their use, but rather in terms of what they reveal about us, such as taste, style, socioeconomic level, and attitudes. Ultimately, we find ourselves needing to consume. We can make distinctions between need and desires. For example, needs are like food, shelter, clothing, and medical care, while desires, well, they're limitless, infinite, and insatiable. So what is publicity? The process of manufacturing glamour. It is never a celebration of pleasure. It is always about the future buyer, and it offers a person an image of themselves made glamorous by the product or opportunity it is trying to sell. Hey, does that sound familiar? So in all, how do we feel about pop culture, or about ourselves as consumers? I think at times it's hard to tell where the media ends and where we begin. Who knows? Without the media pushing sex and advertisements in our face, maybe we would still be making things like Sprite, Disney, and Sex and the City popular. But hey, maybe not. Has our place in consumer culture become so broadly defined as having us as either midriffs or mooks? Well, I certainly hope not. I hope as people we can still resist our culture, have our own inputs, recognize advertisements from real life, and still find pleasure from ripping our jeans or from musicals like Glee. Or hey, whatever you're into.